Continuing this idea of cellular respiration, I drew a basic cell model. Here you have the cell membrane out here, and here you have a massive mitochondria. Mitochondria aren't actually this big. I just wanted to be able to draw it so that you could see it. So quick review of glycolysis. I'll draw glucose again. So there's our glucose, and again, we are converting this glucose into pyruvate. And you should remember that we're getting 2 of these. We're also getting NADH. We're getting ATP. So the pyruvate molecule that we have here is going to enter into the mitochondria. Again, mitochondria not to scale, but what happens is this pyruvate gets converted into what's called acetyl-CoA, and that acetyl-CoA is going to enter this thing called the citric acid cycle. And we're going to get into the details of that shortly, but this loses a carbon, and that carbon is converted into CO2. What do you think you do with that CO2? I'm not sighing at you. You exhale that CO2. Okay. The ATP is just used by the cell, and this NADH is actually also going to go into the central part of the mitochondria for the electron transport chain, which we'll get into shortly. I just wanted to give you sort of a larger overview of glycolysis and how it's going to be connected to our friend, the citric acid cycle. So let's talk about the citric acid cycle now. So what comes into the citric acid cycle? Well, the 2-pyruvate that we made in glycolysis. These are actually going to come in the form of something called acetyl-CoA. You don't necessarily need to worry about that. Just know that these molecules that we got by starting to break down glycolysis, or starting to break down glucose rather, come in the form of pyruvate. What comes out of the citric acid cycle are some more ATP, but also some more high energy electron carriers. And these are not going to be quite the same. These are going to be called 2FADH. These have the same function though as the NADH that we were talking about earlier. What these things are going to do is they are going to go to the electron transport chain, and we're going to use those again to generate a whole bunch more ATP. What's going to happen with these ATP? These are just going to be used by the cell to do cell stuff. Okay, so things to know about the citric acid cycle. It's inside the mitochondria. You get pyruvate from breaking down glucose, and what you get out is ATP and more electron carriers.